Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Thanks for joining today. We are back on the KCS Greenville Sub, and we are continuing to add some details as we move south along the Longview branch. So definitely make sure to check out the past 3 videos on this layout if you haven't seen those just yet. We're kind of doing this stage by stage as we go. So here I decided I needed to do a little bit of rework on the track just heading south from Hugh Springs. So we kind of reshaped a bit there to get some industries in. I had actually left out a spur that I needed, and then I wanted to reorganize the spurs that I did have. And so now we're just adding in some dig holes to go ahead and continue building out the table structure. So this branch that we're currently looking at is heading south toward the city of Longview. And when it gets to Longview, we're going to have basically just an interchange and some staging for the Union Pacific, and that is it. We're not really going to model the city of Longview much at all. We're not focusing on that particular aspect. We're more just focusing on the fact that there are some industries on the north side of Longview that our fictional railroad will switch, and then after that, everything else is UP territory, and so we're not going to run over that because this is the KCS Greenville Sub. But currently, we are just laying out the wall here to kind of get all this decked out. The area you're currently looking at is Ore City. It's very small. It's small in real life, too, actually. But even on our route, it's only going to have one industry, which is a warehouse. We did talk about that just a little bit in the last video. But today we're mostly going to come in, add some details, get the track moved on. We're going to get some trees in, a little bit of paint, and some of the town portion of Ore City laid out. So where we're currently ending up off over there to the right that we briefly saw, that is heading east towards Shreveport. So there are a couple more towns we're going to model as we take the layout that direction. Not too many more, but there will be just a little bit. So next up, we're going to start adding in some of the details around Ore City. Just kind of running around here and figuring out what all I want to do. Realized I needed to backtrack actually and get a little passing siding in around these industries. This is not a passing siding that is long enough to actually hold 2 full trains, but rather it's just a siding that's long enough for a local worker in these industries to be able to run around their cars. That's about all. And that's because the local out of Hugh Springs is going to be the one that switches those industries. And you don't want to have to shove cars all the way from Diana, which is right here, where there is actually a passing siding, all the way back over to Hugh Springs, which is like 20 miles away. So we're not doing any 20-mile shoves, so we added in a little siding over there. But here in Diana, I will eventually add a small yard here for sorting out some cars for the Diana local. We're not going to do that today. We're just going to get the siding in, get the spurs in for the industries, and we're going to hold off on Diana for now. So we will come back later and get this all ironed out in another video. So not quite sure yet exactly how I want to structure the yard. Obviously, all of this is fictional. There was never a yard in Diana. There was actually a diamond in Diana from where 2 railroads crossed over each other back in the 1920s, but that's been a long time. So definitely have a fictional situation here that we're modeling. And so it's kind of open, and it's kind of open for my interpretation and kind of how I want to structure it. So we'll figure all that out, and then I'll get a video going where we get all that straightened out next time. So we're continuing on south. I am going to go ahead and stop the track after this curve. We will do just a few more small things and kind of lay out some tracks here for our industries. There is a town just south of Diana called Omega. It's an extremely small town, maybe 100 people or so. There is a very nice lumber yard there, though. It does not manufacture lumber, but rather it distributes it, sorry. And so we will model that one as well. That's Satterwhite lumber, so that's a real industry. And that's one of the big things I'm trying to do on this model railroad here is I'm trying, as much as I can, as much as they exist, I'm trying to model real industries, but on a more or less fictional operational method on a fictional model railroad. So Satterwhite, for example, is real. It does deal in a lot of lumber, but of course everything is shipped in and out via truck. So, but here we're going to do some center beams and bulkheads and all that good stuff. But we'll literally just be sending in finished lumber to be distributed to the local area. So I know Satterwhite lumber is used a lot for construction. Typically, Satterwhite comes with a good reputation, so I think, probably more of your expensive constructions would pay for Satterwhite. There are obviously other lumber dealers in the area, but this one is along the what would have been the right-of-way if this railroad still existed. So keep in mind, these tracks were real once upon a time, but that was a long time ago. So we're going to go ahead and cut off the table here. And then at this point, we'll start kind of laying out everything for Ore City, which is right here. So we're going to lay out one road crossing. I am going to throw in some of these RR crossing road here. And I had a hard time figuring out how best I want to do this. But I did get a system that I liked, and I kind of got a result that I liked. So we'll roll with it from there. It just took me minutes to kind of figure out how best to do it. I don't usually throw these little... those splines in that have the road crossing on them. In the past, I've always used the scenery asset that you can place instead. So just experiment with things, see what we like. This will be the only crossing that we model here in Ore City, even though if the railroad still ran through town, there'd be, at least 2 or 3. But this will be the only one that we will model. So the railroad historically ran on the east side of town and then curved off to the east, where it went and crossed over what is now in modern times Lake of the Pines. Back in the day, of course, Lake of the Pines was not there, and so this route was actually abandoned long before the lake was ever built, but the right-of-way is now flooded beneath the lake. Except for that one year, forget what year it was, maybe 2011 or 12 or something, I don't know. Maybe it was 2010. That year that we had such a horrible drought that the lake almost ran dry, and you could see everything, including the right-of-way that year. It was kind of nice. So here, just kind of throwing in some scenery assets for the warehouse here in Ore City. I'm not sure what kind of goods we're going to store at this warehouse or ship to and from it. Haven't got there yet. Just know that I wanted to throw a warehouse in there to have some boxcar traffic. A lot of industries in this area are not necessarily going to be shipping and receiving items in boxcars. So since I like boxcars, I just wanted to make sure that we have a place for them to go. Realized I didn't want to sync the track because I'd make my switch look weird, so instead I decided I'd raise the scenery up. And I'll be honest with you, just, bringing up on your spurs and stuff, just bringing up the ground closer to track level just works miracles in immersion and just making your spur look a lot less well maintained, which is the whole intent, because I, as a railroad manager, if that was my job, physical plant, I would not be spending, big money maintaining sidings and spurs on cheap industries in small towns unless I absolutely had to. Now, to be fair, I'm not going to create any sort of scale or even intentional replica of Ore City. I'm more or less just communicating the idea that there is a town here. Keep in mind also there's not any rail service here. So while I'm using the setting of something that's real, I have the flexibility to more or less mold it as I see fit, because I'm not bothering with modeling the prototype. There's nothing prototype about this except that the town exists. The one thing I'm not going to bother placing right now is cars and other finer details. We'll get to all that stuff later. I'm not in a rush for that, just because I've got plenty of time in the future off camera to do some of those finer details. Some people really like to watch videos of people adding the finer details. I personally don't like to watch them so much, but I think that's more because I don't think I'm as good at it as some of the other people in the community, if I'm honest. So I think my strengths are definitely setting up good operations, communicating the idea, selective compression, that kind of stuff, having nice trackside scenery, but I don't think I'm really an expert at modeling like the super fine random details in city parking lots, for example. It's just not really my thing. But I do throw in just a few cars as props, not too many. So I was wrong actually earlier. I had forgotten that I did this. But after we finish here in Ore City in a few minutes, instead of moving further south to Diana, we're actually going to back up towards Hugh Springs and get some work done there in Hugh Springs. Not all the way in town proper per se, but rather just more kind of getting the trees laid out, getting the view blocks, and then putting in some industry. So I figured that instead of adding a backdrop, because a backdrop would not make sense here on this part of the layout, I figured what we would do is we would create more or less a view block with trees. I wanted to lower the density a bit because that density of trees is not necessary. But also I wanted to kind of make it where this part of the railroad is operated from the inside there. So as you leave Hugh Springs, you're walking off to the right, you're still right there. So we're modeling it from the side looking to the right with the current camera view instead of the side there in the back. And that's on purpose. That's because it is really easy then to get from Hugh Springs over into Ore City and then off to Diana to do your switching and whatnot. So, plus, this part of the railroad is not going to be the biggest traffic area. It's only going to have, I think, 3 trains that run on it. And so, really, honestly, you're not going to have an issue with operators getting in the way if we were, of course, simulating the fact that this would be an actual model railroad. So, of the model railroads I've built, this is one that I definitely would not mind building in real life. It would be a lot of fun. The North Texas Beltline is another one that I designed that with the intent to kind of create an operating scheme and see if it was something I would like. So kind of the same deal here. We'll see what happens with it. But thanks for joining today. Stay tuned for the next one, and I will catch you guys next time. Y'all take care.